Has Eli Drinkwitz changed his approach to bowl games? Let's talk about it right now on Locked On Mizzou.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball. And other than Brady Cook's health in this Music City Bowl, I think there was a pretty obvious change that I noticed in the game. May very well be related to Cook's improved health with those few weeks off. Also, Eli Drinkwitz responded to an Arkansas fan who said this was the worst 10-win season ever. Well, I'm going to have my response as well. But you know what? Just quickly, before I get into my argument about Eli Drinkwitz and his bowl approach, I should point out that 5 days of the transfer portal is open currently. That started right after the Music City Bowl on Tuesday officially, I believe. So that'll be ending on Saturday if my 5+0 math is correct there. Also on Saturday, the Tigers have their SEC opener at Auburn on the hardwood as well. A lot of people think Auburn is the best team in the country, so a heck of a lot happening on the Mizzou beat here. The beat definitely goes on. But one thing I've been thinking about for the last few days here, I've been wondering, has Eli Drinkwitz changed his approach to bowl season? Or is it simply just that the program is further along now? And to get sort of at my point here, Rodney, a listener, wrote in and said, I'm a Mizzou alum and have been following the Tigers for 60-plus years. Great win for Missouri and Mizzou Nation. With that said, in my humble opinion, I believe you gave Coach Drink a pass on his, quote, exhibition comments leading up to the bowl game. Coach also alluded to that winning the bowl game was not a big deal. If we will lose, we'll just pack up and start working on 2025. I believe in the age of NIL and the portal. Fans talk about loyalty to schools and programs. I think Drink's comments disrespected not only the bowl and the Hawkeyes, but also our great university, but especially the players that stuck it out with the program and made this game very special. Overreaction? Maybe, but it really stuck in my craw, M-I-Z. Well, Rodney, to your comments, I think, especially initially there, I think you speak for a lot of Missouri fans. The exhibition comment, I totally understand why that would have stuck in your craw, quite honestly. But in retrospect, now having seen Missouri play that Music City Bowl, I'm not really sure what else you could have asked for out of Missouri. I thought Missouri played really, really hard in that game. The guys who were out there on the field, which was by far the lion's share. There was a couple opt-outs, 2 guys who were going to the NFL, Luther Burden and Armand Membu. But Brady Cook, hey, he was out there the entire game. No Cam Ward situation here. Johnny Walker Jr. was out there despite an injury. Theo Weiss was out there. Ended up getting hurt in the game, by the way, too. So, to me, really, since the first 2 seasons, for Drinkwitz, 2020, the COVID season where Missouri was scheduled to play Iowa in a bowl and said, you know what, we're gonna call it a season after this weird 2020 campaign. Then the next season, the Armed Forces Bowl. Well, Missouri had a lot of guys sit out with injuries. At the time, I was a little bit upset at the late notification that Missouri fans who traveled for that game got. And obviously, Missouri played a backup quarterback in that game with Connor Bazelak banged up as well, a fellow by the name of Brady Cook, who we all obviously know well at this point. So you could argue that Missouri didn't take the first 2 seasons of Drinkwitz bowls at Missouri. You could definitely argue that. I could see Rodney's point there. But to me, ever since then, the 2022 game down in Tampa, I don't remember any prominent opt-outs in that particular game. Missouri didn't play particularly well, but I don't know. The opt-out part, I just didn't see that. So obviously, 2023, Missouri clearly took that game a lot more seriously than the Buckeyes took the Cotton Bowl. And again, this past season, I really just don't see how you can complain about the effort in the Music City Bowl. And specifically, I think there's some good context here from Drinkwitz. He was talking about Johnny Walker here after the game. He said, I'm going to tell everybody he's got an injury. I thought he wouldn't play. In fact, I told him if he were my son, I wouldn't let him play. But he said, no, I want to play. I'm going to play, and I'll get it fixed afterward if we have to get it fixed. No, we're just going to keep going. And Drinkwitz continued, for him to play 4 quarters tonight, I'm going to get ready for the draft. He could have said all this stuff. You just don't have to do anything anymore. Basically, Drinkwitz wrapped it up by tapping Johnny on the leg saying, I love you, buddy. So to me, that doesn't really show, since Drinkwitz admitted, hey, if you were my kid, if it were up to me, I'd have probably just told you to sit out. Well, that tells me that Drinkwitz hasn't necessarily changed his approach to bowl games. And of course, there is a sliding scale on all of this stuff. The Armed Forces Bowl is different from the Cotton Bowl. And obviously the Cotton Bowl is different to Missouri last season than it was Ohio State, or at least Marvin Harrison Jr. specifically. So I don't know that Drinkwitz has changed his approach as much as necessarily this program is further along. He's gotten so much buy-in from his players, from guys like Theo Weiss and Johnny Walker, and of course Brady Cook too, that for most of those guys there really wasn't a thought, unless you're a high-level NFL prospect like Luther Burden, really not a lot of thought to sitting out this game. And to me, this isn't about the individuals and their decisions. What I'm actually getting to here is this is a compliment to Eli Drinkwitz and the program and the culture that he's been able to build, especially, again, in a transient era of the transfer portal and NIL. I think that's one of the most impressive parts of what Drinkwitz has done so far in his time at Missouri. Another listener has more praise for Brady Cook, saying that he's a top 5 Missouri quarterback in his lifetime. Sam says, I actually have him 5th, behind Brad Smith, Chase Daniel, Drew Lock, and James Franklin, in that order. And first of all, I kind of love seeing somebody with Brad Smith first, but regardless, I would probably have Chase Daniel first. But to me, Brad Smith, Chase Daniel, in some order or another, are undoubtedly the top 2 in my lifetime. Not sure how long you've been alive, Sam, of course. Technically, I believe I was alive at the beginning of the Phil Bradley era. I just simply never saw Bradley play quarterback. So the other guys that I would throw into the mix here, you got to throw in Blaine Gabbert and Corby Jones, of course, too, in my humble opinion, in terms of, hey, who else are we going to consider here? Best quarterbacks of, say, I don't know, let's just say from Larry Smith on. We'll just draw the line there somewhat arbitrarily. But to me, I'd have to think about this more. I really do. Seems like a good off-season topic to delve into more deeply. Again, I'll say this. I could see myself having Cook as high as maybe even 3rd. I don't see him being ahead of Chase Daniel or Brad Smith, at least on my personal list. But I could also have him as low as 6 or 7 too, because I think people have sort of have let Blaine Gabbert's perceived bust status in the NFL affect how they perceived his time at Missouri. And Corby Jones, while he obviously is not going to have the passing statistics that those other guys do, I would challenge you to go back and watch the 97 Nebraska game and tell me Corby Jones is not worthy of at least consideration on this list. But regardless, since we're talking about Missouri passers here, well, I said the biggest difference for Missouri in the Music City Bowl was that Brady Cook had a few weeks off to get healthy, where I do think there was one other thing that was a huge difference in the Missouri passing game that may well have been related to Cook's health too. So let's talk about that and really how this all affected the Missouri season, this entire topic, in the bigger picture coming up here in just a little bit. But first, game time. Yes, attending the new 12-team playoff games should be an absolutely incredible experience that brings fans together like never before. I remember the excitement of past playoff games and cannot wait to make new memories with the updated format and the extra teams involved. Well, Gametime also has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for events even easier. It filters out all the fluff, showing you only incredible deals on great seats. You don't have to waste time searching through thousands of different options. Recently, I used Gametime Picks to find tickets for a Missouri basketball game. I'm telling you, a super easy experience. The super deal in particular stood out as the best value for the event. Just take all the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. This past season, I often referred to the 2023 Missouri football offense as a dink and chunk operation, and that wasn't meant to be an insult whatsoever. In fact, the Tigers were very effective last year at dinking in the passing game, throwing wide receiver screens to Luther Burden, other players in the flat. I would even include Cody Schrader in the Missouri running game as part of that dink operation as well. And of course, the chunk, a lot of over-the-top play-action balls to Luther Burden, of course, Marquise Johnson, and Theo Weiss as well. But what I was looking for in 2024 was a little bit more of the intermediate part of the passing game for Missouri. And that never really came to pass, at least during the regular season. I think a lot of that had to do, honestly, with the injuries. First game of the season, unfortunately, Brett Norfleet, he buggered up his shoulder a little bit, didn't he? And unfortunately, I thought if anybody was going to unlock the intermediate part of the passing game for Missouri, I thought Brett Norfleet, the tight end, was going to be a big part of that. Unfortunately, I think Brady Cook, his ankle injuries and then a wrist injury later in the season down in Tuscaloosa, I think that limited him as well, and that caused Missouri to maybe not trust the intermediate part of the passing game as much. And here's why that is, I think. Generally speaking, this is something if you find this to be an interesting idea, look for it in the future, and I think you'll realize that I'm correct. When a team, when a coaching staff, when an offensive coordinator doesn't 100% trust his quarterback, they avoid the intermediate part of the field. That's when you'll see a lot of wide receiver screens, dump offs to the running backs, with the occasional play action deep shot on first down mixed in. That's typically what you're going to see these days from a team that doesn't 100% trust its quarterback. Now, that's not meant to be a shot at Brady Cook whatsoever. I'm just simply pointing out that during this season, I think he was a lot more physically compromised than maybe we were even fully aware of during this season. And the reason I think that is because, once again, I thought Brady just looked like a different player in the Music City Bowl with a few weeks off for his ankles and his wrist to heal up. Again, he was so much more spry with his legs. Those scrambles, those design quarterback runs were really, really effective. And not only that, he was able to buy more time in the pocket and find players frequently in the intermediate part of the field, whether it was the middle or the sidelines for, say, that 10 to 15 yard type of area. There was more of that being done. That area of the field was being attacked by Missouri at that point than I had seen in weeks, probably the entire season, to be honest with you. So it was almost as though, hey, let's let her rip, because the intermediate part of the field, again, you don't trust your quarterback. The reason you want to avoid that part of the field is that's typically where most of your interceptions are going to come. There's a lot more traffic in the middle part of the field, especially against zone coverage, that type of deal. I understand why if you don't trust your quarterback 100% fully, or maybe you trust your defense, maybe it has something to do with other factors in the game as well. Nothing in football lives in a vacuum, but I do think showing more of that ability to attack the intermediate part of the field, hopefully that's something that Missouri does next season as well. And since I brought up dink plays, well, one play I'd like to see maybe removed from the Missouri playbook, at least one pass route I'd like to see from the moved from the Missouri playbook. Something I've been noticing a ton lately, which is that out of a pistol formation, this is not a Missouri exclusive thing by any stretch of the imagination, but so often I see running backs from the pistol formation run a route into the flat that is, well, almost not even to the flat. It's behind the line of scrimmage. They just run exactly parallel to the line of scrimmage, but of course, with the quarterback 2 yards in front of that player, a lot of times that dump off from the pistol formation specifically is now a lateral. That is a dangerous, dangerous play. And Missouri, by the way, lost about 18 yards on one of those plays. Now, to be fair, the reason that play specifically got blown up is Missouri's right tackle, Mitch Walters, was pushed into the backfield by Iowa's defender. That caused the Missouri running back to have to alter his route even farther into the backfield. Obviously, that's not a ball that Brady Cook should have thrown with the benefit of hindsight, but just in general, the design of that particular route, it's supposed to be a release valve. It's supposed to be a safe pass. Well, if it becomes a lateral, now all of a sudden you've taken what's supposed to be a safe release valve, a safety valve for your quarterback, and now you've made it into a really dangerous proposition. So to me, just the simple change of, hey, running backs, you need to run a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage before you flatten that route out, at least make it a legal forward pass. So if it's incomplete, well, the other team isn't possibly scooping and scoring on you. That's a change that not only Missouri should make, but every single offense who runs the pistol in the country, which is basically everyone at this point. That should be an easy change, in my opinion. And Eli Drinkwitz did take a tiny bit of time out of his day to respond on Twitter to a relatively prominent Arkansas fan who said that Missouri's 2024 will go down as the worst 10-win season of all time. Well, Eli had his response. I'm going to have mine coming up here in just a minute as well. But first, a FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. And FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a victory, including anytime touchdowns by Josh Manning. Thank you, Josh, for saving my bacon, because clearly the under did not go as I planned. But regardless of what you're into, you got to visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So when somebody says you have the worst 10-win season of all time, really the only response to that is simply laughter, because that's sort of like saying, hey, you're the world's ugliest billionaire. Well, you know what? Even if that's true, I'll still take it, because a 10-win season is still better than whatever Arkansas just put out this past season. That season was too good almost for Arkansas, because they can't even fire Sam Pittman and get to rally on the back of a new coach this offseason. But I will say this, you can point to one-score games and say that, hey, maybe Missouri was a little fortunate the past couple seasons. Well, I will say this, Missouri 6-1 this past season in one-score games. First of all, not all one-score games are created equally. The Boston College game, for example, maybe a little bit closer than Missouri fans would have liked, but I certainly don't see that as a fortunate win for Missouri at all. Boston College got a late touchdown in the game. Missouri had one more possession, leading by 6, and got enough first downs, kneeled out the clock. So was that game a nail-biter? I wouldn't exactly say it came down to the very end. That's just my perspective. Now, on the other side of the equation, how about South Carolina, the one game that Missouri did lose in one score the past 2 seasons? Well, we couldn't get a stop at the end of the ball game. So I think Missouri deserved to lose that one. As close as it was, I think South Carolina was the correct team. There's no way to just say, well, Missouri got unlucky there. Nope. South Carolina was just a little bit better on that day. And also, back to 2023, a game that wasn't technically a one-score game at the end of the day. LSU, Missouri loses that game at home. Their only home loss of the season will not go down as a one-score game officially, but really a late Brady Cook interception that's returned for a pick 6. To me, that's desperation time. If anything, I want my quarterback to take chances in that spot. That is not the time for the dink balls. You want to attack the intermediate and deep parts of the field so you can come back and win. Whether he throws a pick there and gives up a meaningless touchdown, I really don't care. I simply want my quarterback to try to win. So, again, not all one-score games are created equally, and not all, well, real one-score games, I would say, like Missouri and LSU a couple years ago, well, not all of them actually go down as one-score games, because technically they are. You can only go by the final score, I suppose, but again, context is just so important here, and regardless, the margin of success at this level, the margin between success and failure is just so ridiculously thin. For example, here's the best example I can think of. Ohio State, if this was still a 4-team playoff and the Buckeyes likely don't make the field, guess who gets fired? Ryan Day, their head coach, after losing to Michigan for, the umpteenth millionth year in a row. I don't know what exactly the streak here is, but it hasn't been great for Ryan Day against the Wolverines the past few seasons. And now, look where Ohio State is. They just blew out Oregon in the Rose Bowl, and they look like the odds-on favorite to win the whole thing. Again, that's how thin the margin is. Something that was completely out of Ryan Day's control may have saved his job. And finally, one more user comment here to send you out on a high note on this Thursday afternoon. Rick says, like Luther Burden said, Brady Cook is a dog. It was a nail-biter, but no doubt a great win. Blake is now Craig the Leg. Well, as to that last comment, certainly am a fan of the Craig the Leg nickname, but you know what? If you saw Drew Pyne's reaction on the sidelines, I think Drew might call him Craig the Third Leg, if you know what I'm talking about. So, with all that being said, hopefully this has been another great edition of Locked On Mizzou. Thanks for making this show your first listen every day, and for your second listen, check out Locked On SEC, where it just means more, by golly. Find out Locked On SEC on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts. So until next time, I am John Miller, and this has been Locked On Mizzou.